Good morning. My name's Paul Nelson. I'm the founder and MD of BrandMatters. And at BrandMatters, we're experiencing a sharp increase from the market and from our clients in employer branding and employee value propositions, or what we call an EVP. Joining us today from Aquent is Lee Shorter. Aquent is a global workforce solutions organisation to discuss the current state of the employment market here in Australia. Lee, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for having me.
So Lee, a lot's changed in the past 18 months in the world of recruitment. You'd be very aware of that. So attracting and retaining talent has become a major challenge faced by many organisations across Australia and around the world. So our closed borders have had a huge impact on that, led to skilled immigration shortages. So Lee, as a professional in the area, could you set the scene for us? What are the major challenges organisations are facing in recruitment at the moment?
Yeah, so I think over the past sort of 12 to 18 months, there's been a complete shift in the market. We've gone from being in the midst of COVID, where we had obviously business making huge rounds of redundancies for obvious reasons, funding for projects getting cut, so contractors being let go. And so what that then meant was that we had a lot of candidates on the market that were looking for jobs, but companies not looking to hire. Yep. Now that we're through the worst of that and coming out of the back of that, it's been a complete shift to now, companies really picking up their hiring efforts, looking to build up their teams again, projects kicking off again, funding being given for new projects. And so everybody is now looking to hire. They're all needing the same skill sets. They've all got volume of roles that they're needing to fill. And so it's a really competitive market. We've shifted from having lots of candidates and no jobs to now having not many candidates, but a lot of jobs. And so that's then meaning it's taking a lot longer to hire. Companies are needing to be flexible with the way that they recruit and the people that they recruit. And it's also meaning that it's having a knock-on effect to existing workforces, because they're the ones that are having to pick up the slack. So that then creates a problem for, the employees who are potentially feeling overworked and then maybe looking to leave themselves, which is then further adding to the already difficult problem.
Yeah, indeed. It really is a market of extremes, isn't it? You've gone from one extreme right through to the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Aquent specialises in placing digital and creative talent in our industry, in the brand and marketing and creative services industries. So in your experience, what are these employers looking for in an organisation? What are the main factors driving their decision making?
Yeah, so we do a lot of research into this, and our data shows that a very small percentage of people are active with their job search at the current time. Probably only about 15-16% of people are actively looking. So these are people that are on Seek, on LinkedIn, on company careers pages, reaching out to hiring managers, trying to get an opportunity for themselves. So very, very small percentage. But what the data also shows is that around 60% of people, if they were approached about the right opportunity at the right time, they would consider a move. And so that's very important when it comes to things like, employer brand, the ways in which we can entice people to our organization, what would prompt them to leave one role for another role if they're not actively looking. Things like pay is obviously an important one. We're seeing a sort of increase in salaries because the demand is so high. People are kind of looking for up to around 20% increases to change jobs, which is quite considerable. But I think that sort of the top three things that people would be looking for and why they would change jobs would be interested and varied work, strong leadership, and most importantly, flexible working.
So losing good people is always tough on organisations, especially losing creative people or those highly valued by clients in service organisations. So what makes talented people leave good jobs?
So there are a couple of reasons. The main one being poor leadership. So people are 3 times more likely to leave a job because of poor leadership than they are for more money. So, people kind of think, oh, you're looking to change jobs, it's because you want a bigger salary, a larger role, and, things along those lines. But really, most people are leaving managers rather than jobs.
Yep.
And so that creates a problem. And I think that there are things that can be done in terms of leadership coaching and all of this kind of thing, to kind of increase staff well-being and happiness. I think that, as well as that, sort of placing importance, or as much importance, on retaining your existing workforce rather than throwing all of your efforts into hiring new staff. People are kind of leaving if they're sort of seeing, I'm coming to the end of my contract, but nobody's spoken to me about an extension. All they're concerned about is bringing new people into the business. Or if I've been kind of gunning for a promotion for the past 18 months and all of a sudden they're hiring for the role that I feel like would be a logical next step for me. Again, these are all reasons why people would kind of look to move on.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of attraction and retention, and you talked a bit about that already, and the role of employer branding, what are organizations doing to retain their best and their brightest?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot that can be done in terms of attracting new people to your business, but that should not come to the detriment of the existing workforce. So keeping your existing workforce happy. An unhappy workforce, that is then going to kind of spread externally, because if people can see that, average tenures are really short, people are leaving kind of 6-12 months in, that's then going to make them think, well, actually, there's something inherently wrong within this business, and that's probably not something that I would want to get into myself. And people know people, in the creative industries, in marketing. People have friends that work in the industry. They will talk, people will post on LinkedIn about positive experience that they're having with a particular employer. So that all kind of plays into, ways in which they can attract people to a business. I think it's important as well for businesses to really kind of speak to their top performers and see whether they feel as though internally people are perceiving their brand in the same way that the company thinks that their employees or external people perceive their brand, because they can be two completely separate things. That can be done through things like interviews or surveys with your staff. They're the ones that are kind of living and breathing the brand and its values, and sort of then trying to link that into your employer brand and your employee value proposition, so that it really resonates with the existing workforce.
Yeah. As I mentioned at the outset, we do a lot of work in employer value proposition development, and the market's moved quite a bit there with just the rate of inquiry coming through to us, with people seeking to work out, how do I attract and retain the best? How does my organization be known as the place to work and the people to work with? So I guess the question is around employee value propositions. How important are they in overall terms? Do you hear a lot about them in your day-to-day activities at Aquent?
Yeah, it's extremely important. We hear about it all the time, and it's something that we're consistently asking our clients, because we're representing their brand to the market, really. And so we need to know the ways in which we can entice people to your business when there's so much opportunity out there for people. How can we position you as the place, the right next step for them to sort of take in their career? So I think you need to look at an employee value proposition and really see whether that actually aligns to what's important to people now. The way in which we are working has changed significantly. So, previous employee value propositions may have contained things like, we've got a strong office culture and we have lots of social events and all of this, we've got ping pong tables and a beer fridge, all of this kind of stuff. But if you're not in the office, that's irrelevant. And so your value proposition then needs to pivot and sort of align to what's important now. And that's things like, flexible working, long-term opportunities, career development, education and training, all of these kind of things are what people value. And so that then needs to be built into your employee value proposition. What I also think is that companies, particularly when they're looking to attract new people to their business, are sort of placing too much importance on what they want and what they need versus, having a strong employee value proposition that's going to be employee centric. And so we always kind of link it back to this notion of what's in it for me. So if you have a look at a job description or a job advertisement, and you'll see a laundry list of, we need 5 years experience in this. You must have experience in that. This software is of vital importance. You need to come in with experience. And that's all ways in which you can actually turn people off when really, sort of reframing that to, what are you actually going to get out of it? And what benefit are you going to get from working with us? We can offer this. The projects that you'll work on will allow you to do X, Y, and Z. This is what our employees are saying about us, and having employee testimonials and all of these kind of things, so that people then, no longer have a reason to turn down an opportunity, but rather look at it and think, actually, this is something that I really want to explore.
Yeah, indeed, Lee. Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It feels like there's a real mutuality there. It's rather than the employer just saying, here's what we expect of you, also being able to go back to the employee and say, here's what you can expect from us in return, so that mutuality actually occurs. Yeah. Okay. You've also talked about the fact that the market's changed and organizations have to pivot, and as they have done through the working from home and all those sorts of things, flexible working, hybrid working environments. Given all that, how many organizations are you seeing are actually updating that employee value proposition, or just leaving it lie and relying on what they used to say to attract and retain the best, versus updating it to a more current context?
Yeah, I think that there are some companies that are updating it, but definitely not enough. And I think it really needs to be looked at. I think, firstly, if you don't have an employer brand or an employer value proposition, that it needs to be put together. But I think if your EVP needs updating, that it's important that you involve your people in that process. They're the ones that are kind of living and breathing your brand and its values on a daily basis. And so they're the ones that really should have an input into what they are. And this can be done through things like workshops. I always find that an external party facilitating that helps, because there's no bias either way towards an organization or its people or its values. And so facilitating a workshop to kind of think, what's important to you? What do you enjoy about working for this business? What opportunity have you been afforded? So sort of getting your people involved in that process. And then I think it's also important that, it's not just words on a page, that once you've put together your employer brand and you've put together an employee value proposition, that's seen to be actioned. That people know about it, that they're aware of it. If your employee value proposition contains things like, we value, training and development and lifelong learning, but in reality, you don't afford people the opportunity to go and do courses or attend, conferences or events, or, kind of paid time off to go and do some education that's really going to benefit you, which is then also going to benefit the business. If you're not living and breathing the values that you say that you have, then it's kind of pointless, really. And the same goes for various other things like, diversity and inclusion. If that's part of your EVP, really, is that just a token gesture, or are you building, do you have a D&I council? Are you placing importance on diversity and inclusion? Are you including that in your hiring processes? Are you affording opportunities to the same people, regardless of their background or their gender or their religion? All of these kind of things, I think companies need to get better at. That it's not just about having a strong employee brand or a strong employee value proposition, but then how do you actually bring that to life within your organization. So having things, say for example, having we've seen things like having like an employee value champion. And so,
okay.
Kind of people within the business that really embody everything that value stands for, having them get involved in the onboarding process of new starters and educating them on what the values are and how they can help bring that to life. All of these kind of things, and it comes back to getting your people involved, because as I said, they're the ones that are kind of, living and breathing your values.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it just can't be, posters on the wall or, some nice creatively written words in a PowerPoint deck. It's got to be authentic, doesn't it? And that's the sort of things that you're talking about there. And it's got to be demonstrated through leadership as well. They've got to live that and breathe it on a day-to-day basis. It's got to turn up for their employees on a day-to-day basis. Absolutely. So look, as we bring this to a close now, Lee, it's been difficult to predict the future with just so much change going on in the marketplace. But where do you see the talent market going over the next few years? And importantly, how can businesses prepare for this?
Yeah, so I think in the immediate term, the companies that are kind of coming out the back of COVID and thinking, right, now we're through the worst of it, we can go back to normal and go back to how things were, and not realizing that things have changed and changed for the better, they're the ones that are really going to struggle when it comes to attracting and retaining staff. We were kind of hoping or expecting that with borders reopening that we would see this kind of influx of international talent coming into Australia. That hasn't really materialized as yet. I think that will take some time. I think over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll start to see that increase. And so, that will definitely help. But I think that the companies that will kind of get through this process, through this next 12 to 18 months in the strongest position are the ones that can align their values and what they're positioning to existing employees and potential employees really aligns with kind of what they're looking for. So, having a strong employee value proposition, having strong initiatives around diversity and inclusion and sustainability, and all of demonstrating that they can offer career progression, that's of vital importance to people at the moment. And so all of these things, if companies can start to implement this, it's going to mean that they A, have a happier workforce, and B, their workforce is going to advocate for them and attract other people into the business who are hearing good things about this organization. So that's kind of how I see things playing out.
Yeah, fantastic. Lee, look, that's been tremendous. We really do appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today. There's some deep insights you've provided, and we're very grateful for them. So thanks again, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks.